Hello everyone, I'm Pranshu. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I hope my screen is visible and I am perfectly audible to you all. I can see a few people trying to log in, so we'll give them a few seconds to set themselves up. Meanwhile, if there is any issue with my video or audio, please let me know. Yeah, I'll just share my screen one second. Just give me a moment. I hope you're all well and keeping safe. And I think we should get started now. So I'll quickly introduce Walking Tree Technologies for anyone joining us for the first time. Walking Tree Technologies is a technology-focused company with our core focus on designing and building cross-platform web and mobile applications, perform system integrations, and enable digital transformation. We also specialize in data integration, data analytics, migration from legacy to modern systems, cloud migration, and of course, perform UX design. Apart from end-to-end application development, we also help in providing custom solutions to enterprises for web and mobile and very specific services within the software development lifecycle like UI, UX design, microservices, DevOps, and cloud. Our flexible staff augmentation services also provide clients with on-demand skills to help meet organizational and business objectives. On to our speaker for today's session. Akshay is Assistant Vice President for Delivery here at Walking Tree Technologies. He is a certified Scrum Master who holds more than 15 years of experience in the IT industry with proven experience in IT delivery management. He is very passionate about helping shape agile practices across teams and organizations. This is also rounded up with extensive experience in program management, agile transformation, vendor management, and stakeholder management across domains. Now, before I hand this over to Akshay, I would just like to remind you all that we will have time for questions at the end of the session. So please leave your questions in the Q&A box only, and we will try to address as many as possible at the end of the session. So, hi Akshay, over to you.
Thank you, Pranshu. That was quite a generous introduction, so thank you for that. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me this evening. My name is Akshay Shivastav, and I am associated with Walking Tree Technologies as an Assistant Vice President of Delivery. I have been a part of the IT industry for the last close to 16 years now, and I've been with Walking Tree since January 2022. Over my career, I have dedicated the last few years to helping shape agile practices across teams, organizations. DevOps as a solution to implement agile has been around for quite some time now. It lets teams automate redundant development and operations related tasks, hence helping teams achieve the main goal of agile, which is quick and frequent releases. However, in my experience, I have seen that the one process that usually takes a backseat is proper attention to the quality of the releases. And that is where the focused agenda of today's presentation comes into picture, which is called DevTestOps, which puts a special focus on continuous testing at each step of the development process along with DevOps. So today I'd like to share my views on how DevTestOps ensures that along with development and operations related tasks, the feedback on quality is continuous and given the importance that it deserves. So as part of the agenda today, I would like to focus on what DevTestOps is, how it differs from DevOps, and why we need it. Also, I'd like to talk about some of the widespread misconceptions about DevTestOps and how we can optimize the utilization of this framework using some of the industry accepted best practices. So I'd like to start here. I hope we are able to take some good takeaways and some good insights from this session. And taking back all those insights, we are able to visualize the importance of DevTestOps in our own relevant implementations. So what is DevTestOps? Right? I mean, I've mentioned this term like 100 times since we started. So the question is, what is DevTestOps? So like the Agile Manifesto, even DevTestOps has its own manifesto, which was coined in 2018. And as per the DevTestOps manifesto, the goal is not to really de-silo test from Dev and Ops and raise the visibility of testers and testing as an integral part of the DevOps quality culture. Now, as the name suggests, DevTestOps is a combination of DevOps and continuous testing. So DevOps in itself is a well laid out framework. Combine it and integrate with continuous testing involving early testing, testing more frequently and throughout the delivery pipeline. And what we get is DevTestOps. So what this framework really does, it highlights the key role of a tester in the development of a product, along with operations, stressing that the continuous testing framework should be integrated with the CI/CD pipeline. Okay, so CI/CD pipeline, which is the primary deliverable that comes out of a DevOps implementation, right? The DevTestOps stresses that the continuous testing framework integrates with it. So this really helps lay the most importance on the continuity of testing feedback to the developers throughout the stages of product development. What it leads to is a reduced business risk, possibility of uncovering defects at earlier stages. So as prescribed by Agile as well, where all members of a cross-functional team are equally responsible for quality of a product and success of a project. DevTestOps, along with Agile, allows testing of a project to be done by the whole team and not just designated testers, opening the gates for quality assurance across different levels of development. And when I say across different levels of development, that is something that we'll see on how it does not restrict to testing per se, but spans quality across the delivery pipeline. So how is DevTestOps different from DevOps? So I'll start by talking a little bit about DevOps. So DevOps automates most of the manual operations in any software development lifecycle, leading to faster delivery of a product. And now, while DevOps is a successful practice, there are still possibilities of missing critical bugs because it still follows NSDLC, right? Now, so possibilities of missing critical bugs, scenarios, business requirements, right? There is a possibility of missing them because continuous testing is not performed. And this is where the whole concept of DevTestOps was introduced, where continuous testing was implemented as an integral part of the delivery pipeline. Now, again, I'm repeating a lot of terminologies again and again, and having said continuous testing so many times, it's basically implying that the code is continuously developed, delivered, tested, and deployed. So this while DevOps brought in development, delivery, and deployment as a continuous process, integration of testing into that same process brings DevTestOps into picture, right? So while DevOps focuses on automating continuous software delivery process, DevTestOps brings to the table an uninterrupted execution of automated tests as a part of the delivery process. So what it does is it facilitates immediate feedback based on business changes associated with the product and mitigating risks before they even proceed to the next SDLC stage. Right. So this end-to-end automation of testing helps to integrate quality assurance into DevOps and maintains continuity, addresses overall challenges of quicker development cycles. One thing to note though, like I said, the scope of continuous testing does not restrict to functional and system testing, but it facilitates end-to-end validation. So when I say end-to-end validation, it essentially includes unit testing or API testing, integration testing, system testing, spanning across functional and non-functional requirements. And this is all performed under a simulated environment with automation. So that's what DevTestOps brings to the picture, where automated testing becomes an integral part of DevOps across different stages of SDLC. Which brings us to the next question. Why do we need it? We understand what it is, but what benefit is it bringing? Why do we need it? So again, I'll start by talking about DevOps and then move to the DevTestOps. So DevOps is enabled when continuous integration is implemented along with continuous delivery and continuous deployment. So to enable DevTestOps, it's not a separate implementation. First of all, from an implementation perspective, if you need to understand DevTestOps, it's not a separate implementation. Continuous testing needs to be integrated to an already implemented setup of CI/CD. That is how DevTestOps gets implemented into any framework. And testers start to play a vital role throughout the process of development, delivery, and deployment by enabling faster feedback at each step. So what benefits can we expect from this? Since testing is implemented at each stage and most of the processes are automated, defects are detected at early stages and are easier to debug and fix. And saving time on the test, fix, retest cycle for any defect. So that is one of the benefits, right? We're saving time on the cycle. Also, considering the added focus on automation and integration with CI/CD pipeline, it shortens the regression cycle very significantly, right? Regression of larger applications that would usually take like weeks to execute. Automation integrated with CI/CD reduces that to a matter of hours, right? That is another significant benefit that we can expect from a DevTestOps implementation. Another big improvement that we can expect is greater collaboration between developers and testers, right? Because now the developers and testers are essentially part of the same ecosystem, right? They are part of the same pipeline. And this leads to better understanding between team members, better understanding of the product, better understanding of the requirement, and eventually leading to increased quality of the product. In a conventional software development and delivery cycle, the testers are usually not given as much consideration, right? And a DevTestOps implementation adds significantly to the morale of testers, right? Because they start to get an opportunity to perform all kinds of testing, and they also start to partner in equal ownership of the product. So to conclude the need of using DevTestOps, now the integration of automated testing with automated build and deployment accelerates the process exponentially and avoids human errors and dependencies. Right. So this is where the need for DevTestOps comes into picture. Right. So far what we've understood is while DevOps was a successful implementation and testing was an integral part of delivery, having them integrated results into a framework that really brings in a lot of best practices into place and a lot of efficiency when it comes to an end-to-end delivery cycle. All right. So coming to the misconceptions that are most widespread, leading to the reasons why a lot of organizations are actually refraining from adopting DevTestOps as a practice. The first one that I've seen most in my experience is the notion that the implementation of continuous testing means 100% automation, which is very, very rarely a fact. We all know that 100% automation of any application is nearly impossible. And still many of the test scripts are executed manually. But the very idea that in order to implement continuous testing, we will have to have 100% automation is leading to a refrain in organizations from adopting DevTestOps. So the reason why we want to really bring it out here is for all of us to understand that that is not the case. 100% automation is not possible. There will always be some aspect of testing that will remain manual. So, but DevTestOps will definitely help to increase efficiencies significantly by automating most of the delivery pipeline. Also, many large organizations, they tend to believe that they may not benefit from continuous testing. Reason being that we have a huge development team and we have a huge QA team. So how do we manage collaboration? How do we coordinate between huge teams? And implementing continuous testing and trying to foster this collaboration may become an overhead, which again leads to organizations refraining from adopting practice. Right. So what we need to keep in mind here is that continuous testing, since its inception, has been a very revolutionary concept for both testers and developers. Right. Developers are moving closer to customers. Right. As agile practices came more into being, developers are able to communicate more with their customers. They are able to understand their requirements, their investment, their ROI on a more closer level. And they are able to deliver what the customer wants more efficiently. Right? Testers are getting closer to customers. They are getting closer to developers. They are getting closer to business analysts. Right? And with the introduction of Agile, along with DevOps, along with continuous testing, these people are anyways coming together. They are getting closer with the customers and with each other. Right? So it generally does not become an overhead, but instead starts to foster better collaboration and better efficiency. Right? And the biggest and probably most popular myth about DevTestOps implementation is that it costs more than the benefit it brings. Now, I'm not going to say it doesn't cost because it does. And granted, it is a significant one-time investment. But once a team is equipped with this functionality, the return is tremendous. Better code quality, because no piece of your code is going untested. No human mistakes, as most of the process is automated. Immediate feedback leading to early root cause analysis, and quicker and easier fixes for bugs. And since these bugs and defects are detected early, the cost of fixing those defects reduces significantly. So it may look like a significant investment, but it leads to great returns in the long run, right? So as we understand DevOps, continuous testing, and DevTestOps more, it really helps us understand that while it may be a significant investment, but there is a huge return coming out of it. So our attempt with this slide specifically is to help uncover some of these myths around DevTestOps so that we can have a holistic understanding and we can go back with these insights and be thoughtful of these myths and challenges when we think about implementing DevTestOps in our respective environments. All right. So like any process, be it SDLC, Agile, DevOps, DevTestOps also comes packaged with its own set of best practices. And these are best practices which can help make it more efficient and effective. Now, again, pointing out to my repetitions, I've mentioned many times during this presentation, increased focus on automation is key to implementing DevTestOps successfully. However, we should note that not just the test cases, but also any repetitive processes that qualify as a candidate for automation should be automated. This would really help save a lot of time. Also, like any practice out there in the market, there is always a plethora of tools available for any implementation. And it's no different for DevTestOps implementation. So, selection and integration of the right tools, this is something we need to do very wisely to make our integration of continuous testing more effective, faster, and easier. However, the bigger challenge that will unleash when we start to implement, like I said, is for us to foster transparent communication between teams. Better understanding leads to reduced confusion and eventually good productivity. And lastly, ensuring that testing is performed at all levels. Like I said, unit, API, GUI, database. The testing automation should be implemented at all levels and not just restrict to functional and system testing like we usually do, right? Usually when we think about test automation, we think about regression, right? We think about repetitive tests. We think about functional test validation. We think about smoke testing. But when we think about DevTestOps, implementing automated testing at each level is really adds to the overall system. And while we are doing automated testing at each level, right, we also need to incorporate system and performance testing at an overall application level, right? So the primary items that we were looking at when we were talking about automation do not go away. We are still going to do smoke test automation. We are still going to do regression suite automation. We are still going to do performance testing, but all of it incorporated into every level of an SDLC or CI/CD pipeline. That is where the real value of DevTestOps comes into picture, and most of these testing types are automated. Okay. So this is essentially what DevTestOps is. To summarize, we're talking about combining the benefits from DevOps and integrating continuous testing into the ecosystem to make sure that we are able to test at a more holistic level and test at each level of the SDLC. So I would like to take the next few minutes to talk about how we have DevTestOps implementations in Working Tree. So like I mentioned earlier, we have been practicing DevOps in Working Tree for many years. And we have been able to create a very successful team of DevOps practitioners, engineers, and architects within Working Tree. As a services business, we do offer bringing our DevOps practice experience on the table and collaborate with our customers for their success. Alongside, we have also successfully delivered end-to-end test automation solutions in the past, where we bring in test automation expertise across different levels of SDLC to help our customers build robust products and services. Now, implementing DevTestOps may be a significant cost, like I mentioned earlier, but we have been able to help our customers realize better ROI by integrating DevOps and continuous testing into an effective DevTestOps implementation. We also have a strong agile practice, and we have successfully delivered multiple agile transformation programs in the past, where we bring in the coaching, process implementation, and training, and help our customers build strong agile practices within their teams. And how we keep our focus, we have coupled with, we couple DevOps and test automation, leading to early benefit realization for our customers. When we couple our agile practices with our DevTestOps practices. So we as an organization have strong centers of excellence focused around DevOps and quality assurance, working together in collaboration, which really makes Working Tree a strong technology services organization, and also a strong team equipped to support any initiatives related to DevTestOps. With that, I would like to conclude today's session. Thank you so much, everyone, for your patience throughout the session. And I'm hopeful that you will go back with some constructive takeaways. So this is Akshay Shivastav from Working Tree Technologies. And here I would like to open up for any Q&A that can be facilitated by Pranship.
Yes, thank you, Akshay. We do have a couple of questions so far. John wants to know, actually saying Accenture called self-healing test automation as the next big thing 2 years back. Has adoption lagged?
So I would not say adoption has lagged. Self-healing automation solutions are definitely something that the market has seen significantly growing in the last few years. But it may not apply to everything. It may not apply to all kinds of products. So, like I said, careful selection and integration of the right tools is very critical when it comes to implementing a successful DevTestOps implementation, right? So self-healing and AI-driven test automation is something that is definitely there in the market, and it is implemented where it fits. But it's not that the industry is lagging, it's just that it doesn't fit everywhere.
All right. Tim wants to know whether to implement DevTestOps in-house or outsource it to a third party. What scoping questions should be considered?
So it entirely depends, right? Depends on whether you want to build that infrastructure in-house. If you see a DevTestOps implementation fostering as a long-term infrastructure implementation within your organization and within your infrastructure, it makes sense. right? But usually how the outsourcing business works, right? If it's not our core business, we outsource, right? Now, technology may not be every organization's core business, right? Core business may be retail or maybe financial services, banking, right? Where technology plays an integral part, but again, it's not a core business, right? So to run the core business, do we want to spend on in-house infrastructure, or do we want to outsource to third-party experts who can bring in that expertise and help you with better implementation? That is something we may need to think about. If you want to build that infrastructure in-house, we can bring in those experts within the organization and build that. But again, it depends on what route we want to take.
All right. We have another question from Eva. The software engineering community understands the operational overhead of running a complex microservices architecture. Engineers typically spend 25% of their time undergoing operational challenges. How could AI ops lower this number and free up time for engineers to get back to coding?
I would not completely agree with that, because eventually how effectively we are able to support the engineers with enough allocated time for coding depends on how we shape the practices, how we shape the processes. And when we talk about AI ops or ML ops or AI driven test automation, we are essentially talking about freeing up time, right? Because when the operational aspect of a delivery cycle or a deployment cycle moves on to an automated framework or an automated pipeline, we are freeing up time for the developers anyways. And when it comes to microservices, right? Now, microservices in itself is a complex framework, right? And there are multiple architectures that support microservices. Now, in order for us to be able to implement DevTestOps or DevOps effectively for microservices, DevOps coupled with cloud implementation, again, we need to spend time on setting up that infrastructure, setting up that framework. But eventually, the practice that we implement, the process that we put in place is going to support the engineers and developers and testers to really free up their time and spend it on real technical focus areas.
Okay, Harshal wants to know, are there any security tools involved in DevTestOps like system hardening?
There are. So security testing, again, is as much a type of testing as any other that we've talked about, right? The reason why I did not mention it specifically during my presentation is because security testing may not apply to every implementation, right? Organizations who are running BFSI businesses or retail businesses, they may want to focus more around security. But security system hardening testing is something that not everybody is going to opt for. But to answer your question, yes, DevTestOps does facilitate for incorporating security testing as a practice within the continuous testing pipeline.
Right. We have another question. Currently, I'm struggling to automate functionality of a Salesforce application. Trying to automate with Selenium, but finding it very hard to locate elements. Do you have any suggestion for me in this regard?
To be honest, not to too much of an extent of detail, but I guess you may need to consult with a Salesforce and Selenium expert to really combine those expertise and look at how it can be done.
All right. Malaya wants to know, do you provide solution on technologies being used by a company, or do you provide your own solution, including tools, etc.?
We do both, right? A lot of our customers have their own technology infrastructure, which we leverage to deliver what the customers are looking for. And at the same time, there are a lot of our customers who, rely on us to provide the right technology solutions. So to answer your question, we do both, depending on what the customer's needs are.
Right. We have one last question. How can one start preparing for DevTestOps? So I guess they want to know, how do you start learning? How do you start practicing?
So the first step would be to understand DevOps and continuous testing separately, right? And then start thinking about how do I integrate and combine them both to have an effective DevTestOps implementation, right? Because as we combine more practices into a single framework, it becomes more and more complex. So it's important that we decouple these components, understand them in independence, and then you will get better insights into how you want to combine them into a DevTestOps implementation.
Okay. Malaya has another question. Is there, or are there a recommended set of tools if someone wants to get started with DevOps?
There are a number of recommended tools, but like I said, not every tool fits everywhere, right? So based on what the customer's needs are, based on what kind of implementation is required, our DevOps experts, spend time, talk to the customers, and then come up with recommendations on what is the best set of tools that can be leveraged for their implementation. So yes, there is always a set of best practices and best tools that we can implement, but it will always depend on what kind of implementation are we looking at, right? For example, if a customer has holistically Microsoft focused environment, we tend to go with an Azure implementation and not recommend AWS. Just an example, right? So while Azure and AWS are both equally good cloud implementations where we can set up DevOps practices, it will depend on what the customer's needs are.
Prabhat, okay, I think Prabhat, you missed the initial bits of today's session, but Prabhat wants to know how this test technique will help organization to grow the business.
So okay. So I quoted earlier in my presentation, right? What is the benefit that DevTestOps is bringing to the table? What it's bringing to the table is early feedback from testing. Early feedback from testing leads to quicker and easier bug fixes. Quicker and easier bug fixes lead to early realization of business goals and early capitalization of benefits. So early capitalization of these benefits going into market, give the required edge to our customers to really go and grow their business, right? So that's the benefit. That's the idea. You help get into market quickly, combining agile practices with DevOps and continuous testing. You shorten your regression cycles, you shorten your time to market, and eventually end up growing your business.
All right. Thank you, Akshay. I think these are all the questions that we have for today. Before we sign off, I just wanted to let you all know that we are having a very interesting session coming up on designing AI-powered insurance platforms using Pentaho. That's on the 8th of September, 2 weeks from now. I will be sending invites to all of you. So thank you, Akshay, and thank you, everyone. Until next time, folks.
Right. Thank you so much, guys. It was a great session. Thank you so much for the great questions. And until next time, thank you.
Thank you.